Welcome to Grinding to a Halt. This week, I'm talking to Dr. JonPaul Higgins. Dr. JonPaul is an award-winning educator, professor, national speaker, freelance journalist, thought leader, and media critic who examines the intersections of identity, gender, and race in entertainment. They have been named the National Black Justice Coalition's inaugural Emerging Leader to Watch and Business Equity Magazine's Top 40 LGBTQ People Under 40. Their work has been featured on sites like Essence, Ebony, Complex, MTV News, Out Magazine, BET, and Paper Mag. They also host the fantastic Black Fat Femme podcast for iHeart Media. You can find and follow them at DoctorJonPaul on all socials, as well as on their website, drjonpaul.com. And here's our conversation. All right, Dr. JonPaul, it is so good to be talking to you. When I just blindly emailed you and said I was a fan and asked if you would be on, very encouraging, first of all, that you said yes. But I am excited to talk to you. I first learned about you through the Daily Zeitgeist, and then that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of everything you do, which is a lot. It is an impressive resume, and clearly you're busy. So I appreciate you making time to talk to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and congratulations on taking the step to actually put your voice and your work out there. It can be very difficult, but at the same time, it's also very much it's uplifting to see people go after the thing that they want to do. So wanted to just say congratulations in person, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I talk for a living, so I work in marketing agencies. My job is just I schmooze, and then the real people do the work, and I just talk about it.
Yeah.
So talking does not make me nervous, but this is actually the first recording that I'm doing for the show.
Oh, okay.
And
Cool.
so coming in, I was like, oh, I'm actually a little nervous about this. Like, we'll see how this goes. I'm used to the day job. So we'll see how I feel and how I stumble my way through.
It's all
So
good.
thank you for being a test case.
Thank you for having me.
So yeah, I want to jump right in thinking about who I wanted to talk to and kind of the idea behind the show of finding people who are pursuing careers that might not be a traditional career path,
Yeah.
or that is something creative, or someone
Mhm.
like you who is doing 100,000 things at once. And when you pull up their resume, you're like, oh, you do a little bit of everything. You're associate producing shows. You're on Netflix shows. You're doing interviews with Fuse. You're running things with them. You're a media critic. You're hosting
Mhm.
podcasts. You're guesting on podcasts. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on, but at the center of that, it is you. You are the brand. Dr. JonPaul is the
Yeah.
brand. There's no company behind it. You are
Correct.
building a business around who you are.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask, who are you?
Yeah, who am I? Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say is I'm ambitious. I think that's the
Mhm,
the first thing. I've even when I was a kid, my mom it's funny because I saw my mom for Thanksgiving and we
mhm.
were talking about just old stories, and my mom said you were never a person that I could tell no. She was like, you would always find a way to get anything
Yeah.
really, and not in a bad way, but in a sense of like as a child, if my mom said no to something specific, or if it was like a toy, or if it was candy, or if it was food, my mom has always said I had the gift of gab. She was like, you
Yeah.
could literally sell, she was like, you could always sell me back your underwear. That was her favorite thing to say. You were just very convincing in everything that you do. And so I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. It was
Yeah.
like, I knew that I was a great speaker. I knew that I was a really good conversationalist. Like I knew that I had the ability to be able to kind of like be in a million places in terms of the way I think, but then also it was just this notion of I always kind of felt like something was stopping me. And
Yeah.
so, I speak very publicly, and a lot of people do know this, a lot of people don't know this about me, but like in 2017, I had taken a job basically. both of our values didn't align. I was very pro-black. I was very anti-police. The
Hmm.
job that I had taken, they had basically said, your values don't align with our values, and so they let me go.
Yeah.
And again, this is nothing that's not public that you can't Google.
Yeah.
And so all that to be said, after that happened, it kind of was just like this light went off in me, and it said, the doors are open. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can literally do anything you want. And it's not to say that I didn't know going into the work that I do, right? So I do a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because it's like a lot of the stuff I do is a nonprofit, but a lot of the stuff I also do is in entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not to know that there are not two systems that are working to, in a lot of ways, people say, oh, and I put quotations around help, right? People
Hmm.
want to help me. People have offered me help, quote unquote, but there are also a lot of systems that are trying to keep me out of being
Absolutely.
successful in both of those areas, right? So I say all of that to say I knew what I was getting myself into when I set up my LLC. I knew what
Hmm.
I wanted to do. My thing was, it was really just telling myself every day, you can do this. And so I think that's been the biggest thing, I would say almost 8 years later, right? So I started a lot of this work in 2014, 2015. I established my LLC in 2017 slash early 2018, and I've been doing it since then. And in that time gap, there's been a lot of me having to tell myself, you can do this, even in the moments when I feel like I can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you say that even from a young age, your mom saw that in you, that you were a person you were going to get what you wanted. No
Yeah.
one was stopping you.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she is absolutely that way. She
Yeah.
will get what she wants. She is unstoppable. She does not
Hmm.
know the word no. Like, if her mind is set on it, it's going to happen.
Hmm.
And and you're wrong for saying she can't have it, and she will prove to you why you were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's challenging, obviously,
Hmm.
to raise a child like that who is so, I won't say stubborn, but driven and
Yeah.
secure in herself and what she wants.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but when I think about her getting older and the type of person she is going to become, because it is so instilled in her, that,
Correct.
like, no, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to
Yeah.
get what I want. Like,
Yeah.
you are an obstacle now, but you will move because I'm
And
getting.
it's, I'm gonna say, like, I think people oftentimes will say, like, yeah, driven. I mean, it has it has its, positives, it has its negatives. I will say too, like, I by nature, I'm a Leo. I'm a true Leo. And
Mhm.
so that's the other part of the gamut in terms of who I am as a person, right? I
Yeah.
do enjoy being in the center of this. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy being the center of the spotlight.
Yeah.
I enjoy entertainment for that reason, right? People are lauding you and celebrating you for your craft.
Mhm.
But all of that to be said, there's also a part of it that also, I do a lot of what I do because I know that society tells Black, fat, queer,
Yep.
feminine, non-binary people that, being who you are is quote unquote trouble or problem. And so the more visible I am, the more I do, the more I get tapped by
Mhm.
people who go, wow, I never thought I could do it, but I see you doing it and it feels like you're making it possible. So I think that's also, I would say, there's 20% of it that's very much like, ooh, celebrate me, because
Yeah.
by nature and by law, I'm a Leo and that's who I am. But there's
Of course.
also there's also that 80% of me that loves being out there because I want
Yeah.
other people to see me as a possibility model, as I see and view so many other people.
Yeah, and I think it's important when there's things about yourself that you might feel are different or othered.
Hmm.
Like, if you have a position to be able to shine a spotlight on that and
Yeah.
be in a place where people can see you, it helps those other people who have those same feelings, because people do have those same feelings no matter how unique it may feel to you. And like
Right.
you said, they become kind of awakened to, oh, I'm not alone. Someone else has achieved the same thing I want, and they are similar to me. About a year ago, I read this book called Educated,
Hmm.
and the author's name is Tara Westover, and it was about her being raised a hyper religious Mormon. She was homeschooled, but it turns out that she wasn't actually being taught anything. Like,
Hmm.
my upbringing is very similar in that I was homeschooled and we were not
Mm.
taught anything. I didn't know how to read until I was 11, and I learned to
Wow.
read by watching movies with subtitles on. So that was how
Wow.
I taught myself to read. And
Mm,
for me growing up, it was like a point of shame. It was like something I had to
hmm.
hide because
Yeah.
I was different. I was other.
Yeah.
Everybody else knows how to read. I don't know how to read. Something must be wrong with me. I'm the broken
Right.
one.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and as I've gotten older and as I've heard other stories that are similar, it's like, oh, I was wronged. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that I did. It was something that
Yeah.
was done to me or withheld from me. And then once I started speaking about that openly, other people are like, oh
People
yeah,
come
no,
around and they'll share the
me.
same story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it goes from being something that felt like a hindrance to now
Hmm.
when I talk about it, people are like, "Oh, that's amazing! Like
Right.
you
Right.
achieved in spite of." And again, it's different because that was something I could hide. You
Hmm.
can't hide being black. That's not something that can hide. That
Right.
is something you wear at all
Yeah.
times. So it
Yeah.
is different, not comparing the two, but having a position or a feeling or something that feels othered, and then being one who's like, "Hey, I'm going to talk about this."
Yeah. And
It's
I'm going to
empowering.
celebrate it. I'm going to
Absolutely.
celebrate it in an industry where it's not celebrated. And I think
Hmm.
that is the core of who Dr. John Paul is. And
Yeah.
now I'm moving into this whole like, okay, I've set up, this DBA for which I need to finish doing. Um I set up my DBA for, my production company, and I'm
Hmm.
currently in the process of working on a short and getting that funded and all of that, and all of that to be said. I think in that, right, there's still this story and this element of, the industry wouldn't give me something or wouldn't allow me to do something, so I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to
And
take
I
it.
yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and, and and that's basically when I announced the production company. I said, now that I have one, or I'm working towards, creating one, my biggest thing has been, telling people and advocating for this notion of stop waiting for those who see you as the other to give you an opportunity or to
Yeah.
allow you, quote unquote, to come into the room. I said, when I announced it, a couple of weeks ago, I said they wouldn't give me a seat at the table, so I'm building my own house.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just that's the way I move. It's one of those things of like, oh, you won't give it to me? Okay, I'll just go over here and I'll build something bigger.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Fuck it. I'll do it myself.
yeah, yeah. That's basically it. Yeah.
No, I love that
Hmm.
mentality, and then it's something that they can't take away from you.
Nope.
And this was you were talking about this on LinkedIn earlier this week about all the shows being canceled, about and I think
Hmm.
even things like earlier this year when Batgirl got shelved,
Yeah.
but The Flash comes out. Like
Yeah.
you can always tell where the priorities are
Yeah.
and who are making the decisions because
Hmm.
they want the things that look like them. Like,
Yeah.
oh, if I have to pick Batgirl or the Flash,
Hmm.
I'm
They're
gonna
gonna pick the Flash.
because
Yeah.
Zaslav doesn't
Uh
look at
huh.
Batgirl and see himself.
Right.
It's
Right.
such a broken way to view things, especially art. Like
Hmm.
when I view art, and I am a straight white guy, art has been
Hmm.
catered to me since
Hmm.
its inception. I'm aware of that. I don't want art that is a mirror. I want art that is a window. Like I want to
Yeah.
look in and see something different. I don't want art to just be a reflection of me. I'm bored with that. I've seen lots
Yeah.
of that. I
Yeah.
want something different.
And that's what makes you a better person, I think, or makes you a good person. I think the thing that we get so caught up on, and that's what I was, initially trying to say in so many ways, right? Privilege does not allow us to be able to see outside of ourselves.
Hmm.
And I think that that's been the biggest issue in the industry, right? When you look at what's been going on with the strikes, when you think about what's been going on, not even I would say even what was going on before the strikes, right? There were a lot of people who were ultimately
Yeah.
saying that they were being done wrong in so many different ways, whether it be through their overall deals. I have friends who had overall deals that they've had to walk away from
Hmm.
just because folks were doing them in a lot of ways wrong.
Yeah.
And so I say all of that to say that in the sense of like we've got to start, and I think that's a big reason why we are where we are as not only just a country but as a world. There's so many people who are so self-absolved and not really thinking about, well, what's the other person's experience,
Yeah.
what is their day like, what does their life look like, and how can I add to that. I get a lot of people who tell me, just from interacting with me, they're like, oh, you seem like such a happy person, or you bring such a joy to you bring a
Yeah.
joy to whatever space that you're in. And I tell people, I am a believer of, even on my worst day, my number one goal is making sure that in every space that I'm in or every space that I touch, that I'm leaving someone a little bit better.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a laugh, I have a lot of there are rooms that I've been in where we've had to discuss really dark and heavy things,
Yeah.
and I'll crack a joke and people are just like, wow, you're so good at being able to see the better on the side of bad. And I said,
Yeah.
like, that's just it's something that I've always had to do in my life, because if I didn't, I would literally crawl up into I wouldn't be here. Honestly,
Yeah.
I would not be able to make it here. So
No, I am very similar. And I am by nature very, very introverted.
mhm.
Being outgoing, speaking was something I learned over time. It was
Yeah.
a skill set that I had to adapt to. Like you said, you're
Hmm.
a Leo, so it pours through you. It's like
Yeah.
rays of sun coming off the sun. So it's just for you, it is natural. And for me, it was learned, but I'm very similar in that if it's a work event, I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and like I'm the guy that keeps everybody laughing. Like if you're
Yeah.
coming to my table at the conference, you're gonna have a good time. We're not gonna talk about work. Like we're gonna
Hmm.
have personal conversations. Everybody's gonna feel good. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a blast. Um, but do you find that to be at times exhausting and
Yes.
difficult to then difficult to then carry back into your home because
Yes.
sometimes I feel bad because
Hmm.
coworkers or clients get a very different version of me than my wife gets. Because
Yeah.
some days I have to push because some days you just don't feel good. Some days you're
Right.
depressed, but you can't
Hmm.
be depressed on a call. If you're the face of the company, it's got to be up.
Yeah.
So I get on those calls and I push and I push and I push and it really just drains me. And then I get off and maybe I'm not a great husband that day because I feel so drained. And I do feel bad about those things because it feels like I'm giving a part of myself to other people when I should be giving that to my spouse. And
Hmm.
it's difficult to find that balance sometimes when you are the outgoing person that people expect to be fun.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, and what you're talking about is, this notion of like who's filling your cup and who's pouring into your cup, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot about that, like our work, and I say our work, I would say anyone with a front facing job where they
Yeah.
have to entertain people, specifically entertain people for money. That's
Yep.
the other hard part of it, right? Because a lot of it is
There's a
connected
lot
to
of pressure. Yeah.
right. There is a lot of pressure. And it's the same thing for me, right? Like, so, I have a podcast. I have a
Yep.
podcast on iHeart's network. And there are just some, like, even last week is a great example of when I went to push the button to record Black Fat Femme. And I was sitting I'm sitting here and I have the mic in my face and I'm just going, I really don't want to do this. I
Yeah.
just don't. Today has been one of those days. I don't have it in me to like try to laugh or I'm tired. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. But there's also a part of me that says, well, one, this pays your bills, so get to work. But
Yep.
also, there's an element of, again, I know that the listeners there's somebody who's probably going to listen to this. And even if I share that I'm having a bad day, they're going to hear it and they're going to know, okay, it's okay for me to be human. And I
Yeah.
think that's the bigger thing of why I kind of, I get this question a lot. John, why do you overshare so much?
Mhm.
I know a lot of people only share on social media what they want people to see, right? They
Yeah.
share the wins, they share babies, they share weddings, they share all of the things that make them joyful. Whereas
Yeah.
for me, I spend a really good deal talking about both. I'm telling you about the thing I didn't get. I'm talking about the injustice in the industry. I'm talking about the injustice in education. I'm talking about the injustice in the prison, the school to prison pipeline. I'm talking about
Yep.
all these things that are happening around me. And I think for me, it can be exhausting. But
Yeah.
on the other end, when I get home, I work from home. So
Yeah.
when my partner gets home from work, I think it's important sometimes for me to tick that box and say, okay, girl, turn off, put the work away and really just try to be at home. And so
Mhm.
the way me and my partner have really learned how to connect, and I would even say, I would say the other thing that has been such a big help for me, and this is very understated for some people, is getting a therapist. And I know people
Mhm.
are always like, therapy this, therapy that, because, and it's not easy to go to a therapist and outrightly share with your therapist what's going on in your life
Yeah.
or what's going on in your heart or your mind. But I will say that a lot of that anger and frustration and rage that I have, I'm able to process out what is giving me that feeling. So by the time I'm
Mhm.
done with my therapist every Wednesday, I don't have to worry about offloading those feelings to my partner or to my,
Yeah.
or to my mom or my brother or anybody else who's really close to me. So I
Yeah.
think that that's been a big thing for me this year. This year has been stick with therapy. Try to disconnect
Hmm.
when I genuinely always step away from my computer at 5 p.m. I try to make
Yeah.
sure that my laptop is closed. I try to make sure that my iMac is off. That has helped me so much in being like, keep both of those computers in the room. Do not
Hmm.
take them into the living room. Once you're in the living room, you do not work. That has
Yeah.
literally been so helpful for me.
Yeah. I try to stay in the habit of, first off, I have no social media notifications on ever,
Oh wow,
but
that's smart.
it's the only way to get by is to
Mm-hmm.
have all those things turned off. But then anything work related, especially things like Slack, where people feel like they can contact you 24/7 because
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
easy. I
Mm-hmm.
have that where it at 5 p.m. it turns off. So unless I
That's
actively open
cool.
it, no one's
Yeah.
gonna get a hold of me.
Wow.
If it's an emergency, they can call me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but they know not to call unless it's an emergency. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it is important to set up boundaries around those things,
Mm-hmm.
especially for people like
Mm-hmm.
us who do work from home, because we used
Right.
to have
Right.
commutes. I used to have, 90 minutes each way. I used to live in Atlanta. I drive to Atlanta every day.
Yeah.
So 90 minutes to work, 90 minutes back. If I had a really bad day, I had time to
Yeah.
decompress. And now I just walk up the stairs. Like that's so there's none of that time for my emotions to recalibrate before I
Yeah.
speak to the people I love the most. So
That's
finding
really cool.
ways to defuse those things is important. Um, so I love that you first off said, therapy being a big one for you over the last year of really focusing on that,
Yeah.
but also being open about not feeling good or not being in the
Mm-hmm.
mood for things on social media. I think LinkedIn might be the one I use the most as I've
Yeah.
been kind of kicking around the idea of this show and who I want to talk to. It's like, well, now I have to build the brand of me a little bit because
Yeah.
if I'm going to host this show, people need to know who I am. So like testing out content of who am I and what
Mm-hmm.
do I want to talk about, and it tends to be a lot of mental health related stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't like the posturing on LinkedIn. I think it's the most disgusting social media
It
app.
is. It is. And that is why I usually post and leave. I'm real
Yeah,
good about, let me just post this real quick and then I
yeah,
dip out
yeah.
because I'm like, I don't have the energy. And I'm also, I try to make sure that everything that you find, that's the other thing I would say too about for anybody who's listening to this and they're going, I want to start a brand or I want to delve into a brand.
Mhm.
I try to come across as how do you say this? Authentic, I guess, is the
Yeah,
word. And I was trying to look for something better than authentic because I feel like that word's overused. But all that to be said, I feel like, across the board, whether it be on LinkedIn, whether it be on, X/Twitter, I still call it
no,
Twitter.
no. Well, yeah, it's Twitter.
Yeah,
It
it's
always
gonna
will
always
be.
be Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it be Twitter, whether it be Threads, Spill, any
Hmm.
whatever new app is coming out this week, I still try to make sure that the way my brand speaks is who people believe me to be.
Yes.
And some people really vibe with it. Some people think that I'm quote unquote, what's the word I'm looking for? Divisive. I've been called
Yeah.
divisive so
Hey,
many times.
that's a good thing.
Right. I'm learning. It's a good thing. But all that to be said, like, I think it's so important to recognize that, there's so much more than when you posture yourself to be above people or to be above a certain topic or, oh, I mean, you're only what you're doing is you're trying to, I'm just going to name it. You're really trying to you're basically trying to get in good with the beast.
Yeah,
You're really trying to do your
absolutely.
best to align yourself with the system, and that's something that I just genuinely never really want to do. So
Yeah. And being aligned with the system could not be more in opposition of your brand.
yeah.
Because you're taking down the system. That's the point.
Well,
Is
yeah, well, I
it's
mean, and trust me, honey, it's hard. I will
oh
say
oh
this,
yeah.
like, yeah, the tools are there, and I'm doing my best
Mhm.
to dismantle it here and there, and as much as I can. And I mean, I don't know if it's been super effective, but what I will say is that I believe there are a lot of people who look at me and see something within themselves, and then
Yeah.
it gives them the onus to either speak up or to speak out or
Yes.
do what they need to do in order to survive. And that's been my thing for the last 6 to 7 years as I've been visible, right? And
Hmm.
my visibility is continuing to grow. I
Yeah.
want folks to remember that, the biggest part, the only thing that truly is going to save you is your voice, so.
Yeah. No, and I tell people, like people on LinkedIn will post like, who are people to watch? Who should I keep
Mhm.
my eye on? Who's up and coming? And I'm always like, oh, Dr. John Paul, obviously. Like that is
Thank you.
Dr. John Paul is on the up. Like you want to be in now because
I wish a whole bunch of other people would see it, honey. I really do. But that's that is the beautiful part of this journey, right? The beautiful part of this journey is one, people like yourself
Mhm.
who believe in me now and have
Yeah.
not waited, because I will say that there are people that I remember not wanting to give me a chance to do anything back when
Yeah.
I first set out with the brand. And now, I'm being tapped. Like it's very interesting. Like someone from Beyonce's camp tapped me and asked me to write some stuff for her about her. And I'm like, me? Why me?
Yeah.
Like me. But it's that kind of stuff that makes me go,
Yeah.
okay, I'm getting where I want to go. But on the other end, there are times and moments and experiences that I remember where people, and still to this day,
Hmm.
there are people who are like, oh no, we're gonna pass, or oh no, we don't know. And I'm like, okay, when things do pop off, or when things, because they will,
Oh yeah.
don't come back around here, because I'm gonna be real good about being like, do you remember when you said? Because the North always remembers.
Also, the price the,
North.
the price will be a little more expensive next time you come around.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes. Today's price. What is it? Yesterday's
This
price is
price
not
is not
today's
today's
price.
price.
Yes. That is a mood. Baby, that is a mood.
So, how do you? And I know you started off by saying you're the person who is just going to stay motivated and get what you want. But when you get those setbacks and those people say, "Yeah, it's great," you're the, and it's like right fit, wrong time is usually how
Mm,
people try to say it. And to me, that's the worst way. You just tell me no. Don't
yeah.
tell me you like me and then tell me you won't hire me. Like, just tell
Right.
me you don't like me, and so I can just leave and get over it.
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
how do you push through those moments? Because to me, those are the hardest kinds of
baby.
no's.
Yeah. I think this year has proved to me. So I will say this as somebody who has had, I always tell people, if I could build a compound on no, um honey, the way my house would be bigger than Oprah's, like honestly, no has been like it literally, it's become my best friend. Like hearing
Yeah.
no, I get no so much. I just gotta know this week. Like no, you have to become being a person who is doing their own stuff for their own self, to build their own quote unquote brand or business or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
No is something you very much have to get comfortable with. But what I will say is this, and this is what I will say I learned in 2023. I have constantly gotten no's, and I've had to like understand where the no is coming from. I've had to do a
Yeah.
lot of reflection of why I didn't get certain opportunities, and also like really come to terms with why it really hurts me and why it really burns that I didn't get opportunities. And the harder part is when people you are good friends with get the opportunity that you didn't get.
Yeah.
That has been hard. I've had that happen maybe two or three times in maybe I would say maybe the last year and a half, where
Hmm.
people that I actually sit down and have dinner with are doing the job that I went for that I did not get. That is
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So all of that to be said, I think a big part of it is, and everyone knows me and Beyonce is everything. I will just turn on Beyonce. I listen to, her music. Certain songs speak to me and certain songs have held me and gotten me through. So
Hmm.
that's kind of it. I cried out. I have my moments with my therapist where I just ugly Oprah cry, and I get that emotion out. I sit with it for a few days and then I
Yeah.
let it go. But what I will say, and kind of getting back to what I was really trying, not the point that I'm trying to drive home, I had, it's funny because if you know me, you know me. I had a situation happen this year back in September, and I don't know why that in particular thing really sent me over the edge, but it did. It was like,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to go too much into what it was, but baby, I was sitting in front of, like, it's funny because one of my really good friends, she listens to my show. she tweets me, she texts me, like we talk all the time. And we were talking about something, and she was like that one time you was crying outside of the outside of the dry cleaners. And I was like, girl, don't do me. But yes, like that was what it was. It was so, that
Yeah.
moment was so, I don't know how to explain. I don't know if you've ever had a moment like that where you just feel this, like you literally just, you just sit where you are, and you just, and again, I don't know how much of a
Hmm.
crier you are, but I'm a crier. And like you cry, and you're like, you're yelling in your car, and you're like, people are trying to call you. Like I had my agent trying to call me, my manager was trying to call me, and I just was like not here for it. I was
Hmm.
just so mad in that situation.
Yeah.
And for weeks I couldn't understand it. I was like, why didn't this happen for me? Why did this happen to me? I've worked my ass off for this. Like I was just so mad. And
Yeah.
then my agent came back to me in like literally, I would say less than a couple of days. She just was like, hey, um, do you want to do a panel at Forbes Black? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. She was like, Forbes is doing this thing, and they asked if you'd be interested in doing a panel with
Yeah.
all these people that you love. And I was just like, whoa, okay, sure,
Yeah.
I'll do it. And then within like a day of that, I get asked again, do you want to speak on an actual panel? And I'm like, what in the world is happening here? Like, what? Me speaking in front of all these like big name people? I'm on a panel with like folks that like I know who run the like music industry. What?
Yeah.
So it was one of those things of me like when I, from the time that I get on the plane, I get to Atlanta, I'm checking into my hotel, and people are coming up to me because they, hey, Dr. Higgins, I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy
Hmm.
to hear you speak. And I'm thinking to myself, that thing that happened in September was just a reminder to me to not lose sight of what
Yeah.
I'm doing. Right.
Yeah.
Like it was just like I needed that blip to happen for me to be able to fully understand what the universe is doing. And so sometimes, this is my long way of just saying, like, sometimes you really can't understand what God, Buddha, the universe, the inner, whatever you believe in, like,
Yeah.
you don't fully comprehend it. But often it's opening up you to be able to see something bigger and be ready. Like
Hmm.
when I got the call for Forbes this year, I was ready,
Yeah.
and not a lot of people can say that they are. And so
Yeah.
that's the thing, like that bad thing made me see the good in the new opportunity that came. And I said, that's why that happened. That
Hmm.
happened because it needed to happen so I could be ready for this one. So that's kind of my long way of saying that.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I am definitely the type of person that has had those moments where sometimes
Mhm.
something just hits you, and it is, you shut down. Nobody can get a hold of you. You were, like you said, in your car, yelling in the car, working it out, like, and then have to. I am very much a person that needs to internalize afterwards.
Yeah,
So even if I'm upset about something, I can't really speak about it until I understand why I'm upset.
correct.
So I need to just like sit, and I need like, hey, I'm going to take 20 minutes. I'm going to go downstairs, and I'm just going to sit quietly and think about why I'm feeling the way I'm
The way
feeling
I feel.
about
Yes,
whatever
yes.
happened. And I think
Hmm.
that's a skill a lot of people lack, to just be able to take those external factors
Yep.
and then internalize them in a way that you can then process it and then build yourself back better from it.
Hmm.
Like you said, so then when those big opportunities come, you've got that resilience. You've got that armor from all those hits you took, and you are now strong enough to do the thing that maybe you wouldn't have been ready for before,
Yep.
because it is a terrifying thing to do.
And that,
Getting
yeah,
up on
and
a
that's
panel
the
at Forbes
thing.
is a big deal.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, I think, we talk so much about the wins, and I think
Yeah,
we don't talk enough about the hits. And I
yeah,
think that's what's so imperative about building a brand. Like anybody will tell you, and whether regardless of how they identify, a lot of
yeah,
people will tell you building anything from the ground up is hard.
yes,
And that is why a lot of people don't. I've seen friends start, I've seen friends have great ideas, and I've seen them try, each and every time they set out to do something new, they eventually they stop. And I'm like, why
hmm,
did you stop? And you'll just hear, oh, it didn't work out, or I just, this bad thing happened, and I just didn't have it. And I'm like, okay. And for me, I think a lot of people see me and they just go, wow, it seems like you keep winning, you just keep getting these good things that happen to you. And I'm going,
yeah,
it's because I don't let a no be the
yeah,
reason why I stop. Like
Yeah.
I always tell myself, I'll give yourself 24 hours to be in this moment.
Yep.
But when you wake up tomorrow, girl, get back to work.
Yeah.
And it is just and I hate that I have to do, but there have been moments I've literally had to sit and yell at myself in my office chair and say, girl, you got 20, you've been in this for 36 hours. Let it go. Get to work. You've got shit to do. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just not letting that no be the thing
Yeah.
to really stop you.
Yeah, I think we see so many stories of people who, after it is done, after the thing is built, whether they did it themselves or with a team, they start the self mythologizing, and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a Cinderella story
Yeah.
of I did this on myself, kind of the bootstrap mentality, which is bullshit.
Right.
The point of that saying is that you literally cannot, if you stand on your hands, lift yourself up. Like, other
Yeah.
people have to help you. You have to be accepting of help.
Mm-hmm.
So then when people are building something, and then when they look for people to, either be a mentor or role model, but
Yeah.
then they get that version of the story that, like, oh no, I just worked really hard and it worked out.
No.
Like, it's so disheartening, because nothing is ever that way.
Mm-mm.
We especially if you're doing something yourself, like you building a brand that is
Yeah.
you. Not to say you don't have support systems around you, that you don't have your partner there to bring it in for a hug when it's been a shitty day, because sometimes,
Yeah.
like, you just got to cry it out. Like, that is a support system.
Or a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, honey. I have a Krispy Kreme literally a mile away. And some days, like, my partner will look on, we have that, the Find Me app on our
Yeah.
phones, and he'll be like, what are you doing? Why are you there? And basically I'll just be like, let me have this, please. And so yes, a hug from a partner is good, but I also am a big believer in, sometimes you need ice cream,
Yeah.
sometimes you need a donut, sometimes you just need a moment to just be like, let me have this because
Yes.
I am going through it.
Yeah. For me, it's a Philly cheesesteak and chicken wings. Like, I want to
Oh,
go sit in my car, listen to a podcast, and I'm going to eat 10 chicken wings, a large fry, and a Philly cheesesteak. And that's how I'm going to process these feelings out.
now I want Wingstop. I hate this episode is brought to you by Wingstop. I'm just kidding.
And Big Dave's Philly
Yeah.
cheesesteaks in
Oh
Atlanta.
gosh, Big Dave's. I don't know if we have a Big Dave's.
No.
The Phillies brand is big where I
Mhm.
live here in
Yeah.
California. So
No, Big Dave's dude is amazing. Like,
hmm
it was a place I found randomly. He had a small shop next to a gas station in
oh goodness.
Atlanta,
Okay.
and he
Okay.
has turned it into a business. He is
I know that's
franchising
right.
multiple locations. His wife owns Slutty Vegan, which is a vegan food
Oh
brand. So,
wow,
like,
yes.
they
Okay.
are power players,
Yes, I'm very familiar with Slutty Vegan.
and it is the
hmm
best Philly cheesesteak you will ever eat. It
I
is
believe
so
it.
good.
I
That's
believe
free
it.
sponsorship. That is.
Yes.
I'm a Big Dave stan. Nobody touches Big
I
Dave.
know that's right. Yes.
As we're starting to wind things down, so what are the goals? What are you working towards? What are those dream things of, like, hey,
Yeah.
nobody's standing in your way. These are the 5 things I would love to do in the next 5 years.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if I might have five if I
You can give
really
me
think
one or
about
two.
it.
That works too.
Okay. No, I'm just thinking, I'm like, wow, my mind is always everything. But I think the focus has been, I signed with an agency back in May, and Grand Rising has been really good to me in terms of that. But our biggest thing has been trying to figure out what the scope and what the focus of this book that I'm wanting to write is.
Hmm.
I spend a lot of time. So if you follow me, if you've read the multitudes of articles I've written,
Yeah.
you'll always hear, or you'll always know that to some degree I'm talking about, Black queer people.
Yep.
And so the book is really, in my mind, is some type of love letter, um some type of celebration of those who came before me that are still open, that are still here,
Yeah.
but folks who openly live their lives in media, right? And so I'm in hopes to talk to, like, folks like Derek J. I'm in hopes to talk to folks like Miss Lawrence. I would love to talk to Miss J from
Hmm.
America's Next Top Model. Like, those individuals, like, really talking to them about what their history and what their blueprint feels like now seeing
Yeah.
folks like myself and, Travell Anderson and a lot of other non-binary people being out there in the industry. So
Yeah.
that's one of the hopes. The other hopes is, like I said, with this, I always like to say the small but mighty brand that I have, whether it be my up and coming production company. I'm trying to stop saying small, the up and coming production company that I'm dreaming to existence, and also just even my own writing. I like I said, I'm working on a short. Would love that short to either be somewhere right, like I
Yeah.
would love for it to get lauded at Sundance. I would love for it to get lauded at Essence. I would, anywhere that like movies are being screened and people are seeing them, I would love for folks to see it and say, this is something, like, this is the reason why John is a storyteller. This is the
Yeah.
reason why John is out here hustling. But the other thing, I walked out, I went and saw Beyonce's film last night, and I said, I think my number, like the biggest thing is, my dream is to one day be able to employ the amount of people she employs.
Yeah.
Like, I would love, Parkwood employs a multitude of people for different things. And my dream is to one day have, I by no means do I want to be Tyler Perry, by no means do I want to be Oprah. I don't do it because I'm like, oh, I want to be filthy rich. Like, that's not my
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah.
My intent
A billion is not the goal.
no, I honestly, I live okay, and that's
Yeah.
what I tell people too. Like, the work that I do, I have a full-time job working at a nonprofit. I have a
Mhm.
full-time job with iHeart. I've been writing articles. I have, like, I do okay. So
Yeah.
I'm not hungry by any means. But I will say is that I would love to know one day that, I have a multitude of Black queer people working with me on
Yeah.
projects, and they could say, for years, people didn't give me a chance, and your production company or your brand or whatever I'm doing, whether it be a
Yeah.
podcast, whether it be a film, whether it be a show, whatever, like, I want to know that I'm out here walking the walk and talking the talk and opening doors and giving people seats at the table, so that way they too can continue to create and move
Yeah.
and make things happen. So that's the big thing. I think the other thing is, my last, I would say probably the biggest thing in the next 5 years, I just really want to own a home. I think that's the biggest thing here
Yeah.
in California. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
owning a home in California is like basically trying to win the lottery. It is so expensive, and it
Yeah.
is, I've never lived in a house, so I've always
Mhm.
lived in apartments, and
Yeah.
that's the dream. The dream is to one day say I own something, so that's the other dream. And I know it's so selfish, but I only really want to own a home so I can have more cats. I want more cats. I have a cat. I love Lily. She is my everything. But in our apartment, we have a 2-bedroom, and I'm like, no, we can't have any more cats. But I would love to get to a place where I could buy a home and have like 5 or 6 cats roaming around, and, be an old gay cat lady. So,
I love it, and I think that is a perfect place to end.
yeah, I just want to be an old cat lady. I really do. When you see me, there's nothing but fur all over
Just
me. People like, why don't you just, all you have to do is lip roll.
I love it. That is hilarious.
Yes.
Dr. John, thank you so much. It has
Thank
been
you
a
for
pleasure
having me.
speaking to you.
This has been a joy.
And I have no doubt you're accomplishing all those things. Like,
Thank
there is
you.
no doubt in my mind, even just over the last, year and a half since the Next Up program, when you first kind of came onto my radar, like, watching you grow and achieve the things you've achieved it's inspiring for someone who is now at 34 being like, oh, I should try to build something for myself. Like, seeing you succeed it's very encouraging, and I know a lot of people feel that. So
Thank you.
thank you for being you. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.